I think it was up but not live. Should be live now. I mean, it's gonna take. Yeah, we're live. All right. Sorry again. I'm the worst.
It's my fault.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely your fault, Ryan.
No, I take the blame.
I'm Spartacus.
Well, so now we just have to redo the last half hour.
No, I think it's just like the last bit where we were talking about religious symbols.
I'm the worst. It's my fault.
God, no,
It's
I'm
definitely
hearing
your
it.
fault.
Stop it.
No, I take the blame.
Okay, stream is working. I verified.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, so in particular, cool things about the epitome, this chapter, is I really liked how Severian's scientific explanation of why Zadkiel was evolving has turned out to be completely wrong. And Severian doesn't understand that at all. Like, it goes over his head that his explanation of why Zadkiel is evolving is because certain animals will take on a new shape because to look like a predator. Yeah, like Zadkiel's trying to look like a predator to save himself. And those two concepts are not a part of Zadkiel's transformation at all. Zadkiel is trying to become like a human so that he can take the place of the humans at their trial. Like, it's not a, like, in Severian's mind, it's a selfish act that's like motivated by evolution, by like some vague force that controls all living creatures against their will without their knowledge. But it's the opposite of that. It is the almost powerful being trying to know what humans are and become one and be one so that he can do a selfless act for them.
But he's not actually going to trial.
Well, I think that he and Severian are counterparts that are going to trial together.
Right.
Like, that's my understanding.
He's the judge and he is being judged. Like, they depend on each other entirely. And so I think that weird conversation in the dream where Severian is calling Zadkiel master, not knowing who he is, and then he wakes up and Zach is calling Severian master. I feel like that all starting to make a whole lot more sense. And Wolfe's general theme of like who's, when you do favor for someone, who is the one in debt, I think is like really strong here, where the role of the savior and humanity is not one of a superior to an inferior. That it's reciprocal. Like Zadkiel's purpose and culmination of his being is, can he perform this task for these people? And he needs, and then, you know, like later in this section, Feda makes it more explicit, talking about how like we need to save you so you can save us, so we can save you so you can save us, because that's the like left and right on this, how you rode this boat forward.
I'm into that.
Yeah, I'm into that.
Yeah, I mean, it's all the cycles, right? I mean, it's the time, like when we all agreed about this thing.
Yeah, the helix.
It goes back to that, when we all agreed about this. We can just reaffirm our agreement.
Which comes up in this section because their rooms are shaped like spirals because they love that shit.
Oh yeah. And like entropy, like the spiral is just like the most crucial shape.
So crucial.
Yeah, it was. Oh man, I have a half-formed thought. I like thinking about entropy. And like the resting state is the highest amount of entropy. Like stability comes from entropy, but entropy is chaos, which seems unstable, but it is the ground state. It's the most stable thing. And order actually increases the amount of instability. Because
as
order
we're
is
seeing right now in
chaos. What, Ryan?
The plague is like the perfect illustration of that. In that, like,
I mean, that's part of why I've been thinking about this so much. I've been giving a lot of tarot card readings, and I've been having to feed that out to people, and terrified that it's going to upset them.
I think I think that it is for a lot of people that are like going to get through this without having, doing their best not to have anything changed in their head about the world, even though like everything is changed. You got to see things a different way. But depending on what your material situation is, like you can't revise your fundamental beliefs about the world.
I did a reading for a woman the other day about how she's trapped in Moscow with a 5-year-old child. And she's like, I just am so irritated by this child. How do I stop being irritated by this child? And the reading was just about like, you should listen to the child. If instead of like trying to get the child to follow the normal rules that parents and children follow, if you let the child be in charge and did what the child needed, then you would be less annoyed with it. And I feel like that's related to this.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
It's like a giant social control issue that's happening. Like, because things were so controlled, they needed to stay controlled in order to stay that way. And we're finding right now that if something interrupts that control, it can't continue. Like companies can't survive if they're not making more money every next second. And and like we had all bought into this belief of the world that that's not only possible, but that it's desirable and almost natural. That like it's of course people need to be striving for growth at all times. Otherwise the world would be hell. And then growth is interrupted for a second, and now nothing is certain because the thing we had, like, it's still, I think, like, just barely sinking in to most people that it's not possible to exist in a world where things are growing every next second.
Well, right now, it's those people who are kind of hit hardest economically by this. I mean, for people who've lost their jobs, I mean, obviously, like, it's terrible, and for low-income people, it's terrible, but it's sort of singularly catastrophic for kind of middle-ish class people who just have so much like debt, so many like bills, like big mortgage payments, and then to get their like income stream disrupted, because they've like the people who bought into the system so much right now, like they're the people who are getting like fucked over pretty hard right now. Like they have big bills and families and shit, and like when they lose their jobs, like I don't know, that whole Jenga tower can come crashing down pretty fast.
Yeah. And they could all just take a holiday, but they can't. Like, but they all have to do it. If they all say, okay, we're all in the same boat, we're all fucked up, we've got to change the way things work. A path to like, a new kind of stability for them. But they won't all play together. There's gonna, there's people in the chain that are like, no, I need my stuff coming in. So where is it?
I mean, I think it just shows that I don't think it's like hitting those people harder. I think it's just showing that like everyone is in, like people in the middle class who have all these debts and stuff are in just as precarious of a situation as I mean, not just as precarious, but like everyone's reality is precarious.
Yeah.
So
harder,
like,
I think harder in the psychologically relative sense. Like for people who, I think part of what Tim's saying is like people who already live in an unstable state, this is a different unstable state. And for people who thought they had their shit locked up and did everything correct, there's like a psychologically relative harder of
it's a paradigm. They're taking a paradigm hit.
Yeah.
If you're poor, you're already like, the world doesn't fucking care about me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm fucked.
Yeah.
Wait, but how did we get here from the book?
The plague being this model of chaos and order playing off of each other.
Chaos and order. The chaos is actually more stable than order.
Ryan, when we get ahead, and maybe we could talk about it now. I mean, we could talk about Zakil's son too, and like how that factors into the whole like Jesus thing. I mean, I thought that. Yeah, we could talk about it.
We don't have to go in order. We're not slaves to timelines.
Zakil's son doesn't get much screen time here, but I mean, just kind of like thrown in there, and he dies. You know, defending Severian from the sailors. That whole dynamic too, with like these like sailors trying to like fight for Urth, and Severian, I don't know, fighting to save Urth by destroying it is. It's a lot.
That's the same thing. That the people who are defending Urth are defending an Urth that is, for all intents and purposes, dead.
Yeah.
And the only way to really save Urth is to destroy it and start over.
Yeah.
Because the dead must die.
Yeah, there's a really good point in, I guess it's like chapter 22, page 158. There's a couple like really explicit quotes in this section that we read. I'm skipping way ahead right now, but is this the one? Oh yeah, Urth has. Before you came in, Zach showed us that Urth has two futures. It could die and be born new, or it could go on living for a long time before it died forever. And I was like, hello, that's America right now.
Yeah.
We're like right there.
Living for a long time would suck, and people aren't necessarily included, right? It would live for a long time where the whole atmosphere is frozen solid.
Yeah. Like there's a couple people that, you know, humanity survived in some small forms somewhere, but it like
seems like maybe one person, Master Ash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It seems that this whole, I don't know, this section, it just seems like incredibly relevant to our situation at the moment.
Well, I gotta say, it's making me nervous that I feel like we're making an argument that the protesters are making.
What's that?
We should all go out to the party, dance with each other, catch the virus, and die because it's time for the next thing to, you know, the whole Darwinian argument that the libertarian protesters have.
Well,
the strong will get through this.
Do you think is that their argument?
I thought their argument was that they want haircuts.
What, Mark?
I thought their argument was just that they want haircuts.
It's weird.
Yeah, I thought that they're arguing to ignore the virus and do what we were doing before. Just keep on doing what we were doing.
Well,
because the economy.
That's I guess I don't consider that an argument. That's just the petulant whining of children. But there are people who think who have a logic behind it, that they're like, no, we should live our lives normally because it'll get rid of the weak or the people who will get the virus.
I think people
who come out the other side will be the best people that we have.
I think that's a right-wing argument. I don't think it's like that's saying the quiet part out loud, I guess, as they say. Like I think that like a lot of even just not even libertarian, but just like mainstream Republican politics is, and maybe we've talked about this on here before too, is just like eliminationist policy. Like just let poor people die. Right. And in that sense, like I don't think that the protesters on the ground probably think that, but I think insofar as we can agree that the protests are totally like astroturf, like the whoever it is with the money behind it probably does feel that way. The DeVos family, the Bear Prince, whoever the fuck.
I'm sorry to disagree with you, but in the protester Facebook groups, they are saying this, that the weak deserve to die.
Oh, well, you know more about it than I do then.
Yeah.
But I would think that's still a minority of the actual like people on the ground.
Oh, I agree, because there's only a small amount of them that do thinking. But the ones that are thinking, this is what they're thinking.
Right, the ones who are
Interesting, though, that-
astroturfing the whole thing.
What was that, Mark?
The ones who are astroturfing the entire like anti quarantine campaign are the ones who are actually doing the thinking about it. The people who are spending the money to make websites in a bunch of different states, that kind of thing. Not the actual people who are showing up.
Yeah, there's the shadow funding, and then the people who are showing up, I feel like, are largely of the small business right. You know, small business owners, even though their concerns are the same as like any working person, they often end up being somewhat right wing. Small businesses often need to believe in right wing ideals in order to survive.
Because like
so predatory and terrible.
well, they also think that they built everything by themselves without the help of anyone
Right.
else.
I think there is a certain amount of that the government abuses them to keep them, like small businesses in this town do get
Yeah.
it really hard, and that I feel like hardens them in their position of that they need to look out for themselves because no one else is. So it's a weird, like an abusive parent that gets more control over their kid by abusing them.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
Plus, you need money to start a small business, and usually that means you come from money and that you're white and wealthy, and that's increases your likelihood of growing up in a right-wing household.
Yeah,
Cool.
or if you're not one of those people, you've been fighting against odds. So anyone that wants to take that away from you
Right.
is like so clearly an enemy.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a huge part of it too.
Yeah, like like I shouldn't be here. I'm here because I did this.
Right. Yeah.
It's interesting though, the protesters that we're talking about, like the sailors, like they, even if you're saying, or whoever it is that is saying, like we need to go out and live our lives and let the virus call the weak, it's still a position of control. It's still like we're going to control how this virus does its thing to us.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like as neurotic as I feel like the little bit I've seen on Twitter of people pushing that argument, or basically I think on Twitter it comes out more of the quarantine is going to be used to increase the wealth of people, and they're making us stay in so they can do all this shit with the economy, and we're going to come out into a horrible world they've contrived. So we can't let them keep us inside. We can't listen to them. I feel like there's people saying like we're being controlled right now. We need to not be controlled. And there's still the alternative is to control.
I guess they just don't see how they're controlled every day.
Yeah.
In the normally anyway.
And how like control is always an illusion. No matter what we do to this virus, we cannot control it.
Also, what more can they do to us just because we're inside? Like, what more control do they really have? Is it just the power? I mean, in these people's minds, we're saying this, like, is it just the power of, like, being able to say, like, stay inside and people do it? Like, what exactly are we preventing by, like, going to the mall?
In the small business argument, I feel like the idea is that they're going to destroy everything that's not a chain. The monopolies will consolidate here.
Oh, yeah, they're right.
Yeah.
They're right.
But, I mean, it wasn't like, we were on that path anyway.
Right.
Exactly.
It could have happened without the plague.
Yeah, it's like people who think that Donald Trump came out of a vacuum.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, that guy's just George Bush 3.
Well, or he's the 45th president.
Right.
George Washington 45.
Yeah.
What? If we're thinking of the sailors as like kind of like analogous to protesters currently, like an interesting thing is that in the media now you often see this like kind of like rhetorical device of arguing against the protesters because they don't understand or they're anti-science, and that like science is being held up as this like ideal,
Right.
Yeah.
and that makes me think and which I personally agree with and have other thoughts, but I don't want to go down that rabbit hole right now. But like thinking about
relevant to this section, but go on.
But what I'm thinking about in terms of this book, though, like, how much do the sailors understand? Clearly, they understand that Severian will return as the Autarch, and the Urth will be like completely like redone, and everyone's gonna die. But how much do they understand? A, of that aspect. I mean, Pern knows a little bit, but B, I mean, how much do they understand otherwise? Like, what information are they? Are they just like, we want to preserve our current Earth? And
Right.
could Severian be
Also-
seen as like the mainstream media right now, being like, it's science, it's going to be better for the Earth
Well,
if I destroy it?
this might be a tangent or even a non sequitur, but isn't the idea of the people who don't want Severian to rebirth the Earth and therefore destroy it, isn't their idea like, we're trying to get off Earth, like they're Vodalari, right?
Yeah, they're trying to restore
Vodalari's whole
humanity.
thing is leaving the planet.
They're trying to
He wants-
restore humanity to its previous glory.
Yeah, retake the stars. So
Yeah.
you like, sure, kill her. I don't care. I'm going someplace else. Isn't that kind of a possible
thought-
mentality?
I thought they just didn't want the Earth to get destroyed, like remade.
Well, the Baudelaire, their whole thing is wanting to wanting to reharness like technology and
They're progressives.
sort of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess.
They want
Sort
humanity.
of, except they also want to go back. It's like they want to go back to go forward.
Well, yeah, I think like Tim, what you're saying about like right now the dogmatic idea of science, I think totally applies to the Ashaeans clearly in these books.
Mhm.
The idea, that technology is what's going to get us through this, and technology
Right.
is what proves that we're worthy of getting through this. Like, we made this technology, or we mastered this technology, therefore we are the best people that have ever lived.
Yeah, a Vodalarian idea too, and I guess that's Jen et al. That's what you're saying. Like the sailors are kind of like inculcated in that kind of mindset. Like the Earth, we can persevere without the help of the Hierogrymids and Zodkiel. But I mean, to me, it seems like they're fighting for their lives in a way. Like, I don't know. It seems like they're representing the people currently on Earth. That's what the sailors are trying to do.
Yeah, I think that's true, and I think that's like kind of Afeda says, like, that's why they're here.
Yeah.
We brought them for them to be able to have their, like, you can't do your thing if they don't get their say.
Yeah.
And then well, we're getting there. Okay, I have a really specific question on page 115. It seems to me like Pern called Severian a moon man.
Called him a what?
I thought he called him a moon man. He said, he talks about the portal loon.
Yeah.
He says, I'm a simple man. So, like, Severian says, if I will bring the new sun if I can, will you stab me for that? And Pern says, this is at the end of the page, second to last paragraph. Not here, he said. Probably not at all. I'm a simple man. See, I believed you. Only when they caught the real one, I knew you'd been yarning me up. Or maybe your wits are mixed. I've never killed anybody, and I wouldn't want to kill a man for yarning. Killing a Portaloon man's worse. Sure, bad luck.
Like he's saying,
It sounds like he
like
thinks
an
Severian
Earthman.
from the moon.
he thinks he's crazy.
Oh,
Loony.
Portaloon is a
Loony.
saying for. Okay.
Oh, I just thought he meant from Earth.
I thought he meant like we picked you up at the port of
No, he's
Moon,
like,
so you're like
he's
the
like-
harbor of the moon. But I feel like
like-
that's a
he's
saying. That's a
I believe
Idiom.
you because I'm a simple man, but now I realize that you're just a crazy person, and you
Yeah.
can't fucking
Yeah.
kill a crazy person.
Portaloon
I
is a
think
euphemism
both
for
of those
being
things
nuts.
are true.
Yeah.
can.
Start saying that.
I think they also picked him up at the mill.
Yeah.
I think he's saying both of those things.
Yeah, I thought, when I read it first, I thought Pern used the term Port O'Loon to refer to someone from Urth. Like, that's the port you come from. But now it also makes sense that that's a term for, like, being kooky. A Port O'Loon
I mean,
man.
Port-a-loon.
It seems clear to me that that's what it means. But...
Well, in the context, it does seem clear, yeah, like, because he's saying your wits are mixed, and I've never killed anyone, and I wouldn't want to kill a man. I mean, then he also seems to think that maybe, like, Severian's just telling him a lie, too, though? In this paragraph, like, he's talking about yarning, and yarning is something...
Like, he's like, maybe you're lying, maybe you're crazy. Either way, it doesn't make sense for me to kill you for either of those things. It's like his personal morality moment.
Yeah, that little "I'm a simple man" thing does also seem to bring the sailors back to our like right-wing astroturfy people. Like, I'm a simple man. I'm doing a political assassination for simple reasons.
That's right.
I love the quote on the page before that, too, when he's talking about, like, people going to battle and people, like, deserting battle. When he says, those who have never fought suppose that the deserter who flies the field is consumed by shame. He is not, or he would not desert. With only trifling exceptions, battles are fought by cowards afraid to run.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, I feel that's true.
Yeah, that seems
Just a cool little clip of writing there.
that's probably one of Wolfe's observations, personally, too.
Yeah.
Did it again, Jen?
I imagine that that's an autobiographical observation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, what was Wolfe's military status? Did he not serve in, like...
He was infantry in Korea, I feel like.
He was infantry in Korea? Okay.
Yeah, didn't we already look that up?
Yeah,
Probably.
I think we found out he was infantry in Korea.
Okay. That
Amazing.
makes sense.
Amazing.
Like the Big Lebowski.
This is the section, too, where Gunny brings up, like, the predicament or the paradox of the autarch.
Yeah.
That, you know, the future autarch or a past autarch could also be on the ship currently. So she's like, it's no big deal if you go to when you're called, because the other autarchs could be here too. They'll do it.
It's interesting that she, though, seems pretty convinced that if there's another autarch, he comes after Severian. Why couldn't Severian be the one after the other guy?
True.
Yeah.
Oh wait, because we know who came first before Severian, right? Oh, but it could still be that dude.
Yeah, that was like spinning me around a little bit. As time travel stuff always does. I must say I've been playing a lot of Mortal Kombat 11, which is all about time travel, and I don't think a single part of it makes sense. Like, I don't think there's one single aspect to the plot that makes any sense at all.
I don't think Mortal Kombat games are usually known for their airtight plots.
Yeah, how do you get to the plot in a Mortal Kombat game?
There's a story mode where, like, they show you really, really well done cutscenes that are very long in between each fight that link each fight.
Do they make any sense?
No, but they are. I feel like they're like so almost a cruel parody of like Marvel movies. They're like basically. I feel like that the people making them are very serious about the ridiculous plot and like all 30 characters that are like involved and explanations of why this is happening, but not a single thing is consistent or makes any sense. I would recommend it. It's amazing watching. I feel like it's like if somebody making a Marvel movie was like had no boss. at all. It was just like locked in a room. They're like, do whatever you want. We're taking your first draft and we're putting it on screen.
But you don't get to watch it unless you're good at a fighting game.
I think the story mode's it's made for people not to be frustrated. You get through it. I'm not good at fighting games. I'm at the last boss. But I must say the story is gripping. They take, I don't know. It's a different book club, I think, to talk about Mortal Kombat 11.
Thank you for your.
But narratively, it's interesting.
I heard that the second or third Mortal Kombat movie from the 90s is supposed to be good.
I think I've always heard the first one is good, and the second one is like so bad that it's good.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it could be worth watching. Like the first one is probably good in a way that's not that interesting.
Which one has a Carradine in it?
I think that's the first one.
Christopher Lambert's in the first one.
Oh. Well, Christopher Lambert's God.
He's like a character.
Clearly.
He's not dead, right?
Christopher Lambert can't die. He's immortal.
That's the right answer.
I mean, if you chopped off his head.
You cannot die, McLeod.
Okay, so I'm like chapter 17. Are we still in the epitome? Or are we on the next one?
We're jumping all around. We can be wherever we want to be.
Okay, well, roughly chronologically, the 17 is here, and I love the communication stuff. I love the language, tongue stuff that's happening in this side.
Yeah.
Like, words didn't precede communication, and that's a tough lesson for Severian to, like, learn. And I feel like it's tough for people when you try to do that in our world. It's tough for people to get there. I've had arguments recently with a friend about communication with pets.
Oh, talk about that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like communication with pets is based, like, it's possible in a way that is analogous with what I guess a lot of people would think of as telepathy. I think pets talk to you if you want them to, and if you're around them all the time. And I was talking to a person I know who has 2 cats, and who seemed like so dismissive of the idea that, like, when they're saying this cat was annoying them in the quarantine, I was like, you should just do whatever they want. Kind of like what you were saying, Connor, about, like, if you're annoyed with the 5-year-old child in Moscow you're stuck with, just listen to the child and do what they want for a while, and you won't be so annoyed with them because they'll make sense, instead of being like an obstacle to you and your world that's, like, stuck in there. You realize you guys are in the same world. And so part of my attempting to convince this friend, like, no, you and your cat do talk. Your cat does tell you things all the time. You just think it's you interpreting the cat. Like, I think that cats communicate to their owners in a way that it's like, because words didn't exist before communication, and nothing that words express existed before communication either. Communication is first, and then words are a cruder way of doing that.
Yeah, words are just a very small aspect of communication.
They're the shadows on the wall of the cave.
This is the biggest problem I'm going to have with quarantine. Is every time I have to come back and try to talk to people with words, it hurts me. Yeah. When I can just walk around with these ideas and not have to force them into words, my life is fucking gorgeous and beautiful. I don't want to talk to people anymore, No offense to you guys.
Talking's very difficult. It's very difficult to convey things effectively between people using words.
Especially complex concepts. Which I think I'm trying to remember the quote.
Is it a Chomsky quote?
No, it's a Le Guin quote. It's a Le Guin quote about science fiction. It's like, I'll have to think about it. Something about.
Well, I think that's maybe it's this idea that like if you're trying to explain a concept to someone in like sort of non-fictional descriptive language, the language that you have to use gets as complicated as the thing that you're trying to explain, or it overcomplicates the thing that you're trying to explain because it then becomes this filter in front of everything. But fiction, it uses words, but it can explain these ideas and concepts in a way that's not a strictly like one-to-one description, and so you're operating in this kind of like liminal realm of metaphor and interpretation, and so that actually does a lot more to actually give somebody a clearer idea of what's going on than trying to define all your key terms and like lay out an argument that conforms to a really specific sorts of like logical formula. That's why I've always liked fiction more than reading something like uh, you know uh, academic, because a lot of times the academic writing ties itself in knots, and so much of philosophy now is about like the problems with trying to write philosophy, like the problems with language and why we have trouble communicating, and I don't think we have that issue with fiction.
Yeah, I mean, this like we've been over that so many times about how fiction is the only nonfiction. But also the quote, I can't remember what the beginning of the quote is. It's like a two-part thing, but the second part is uh, fiction writers express things that can't be expressed in words.
Yeah.
Also, I think that nonfiction is always an appeal to authority. Like, I feel like if you write something about science simply enough that you're not appealing to any pre-existing authority, you end up writing fiction. Like, if you just write about what a person can see themselves, it doesn't come off as a scientific writing anymore. It comes off as a story about a person. And that where, like, nonfiction always requires you to take somebody up the chain's word for something. Fiction, you can do all the work in your own self.
Yeah, you got to have all of your sources.
You have to, in fact.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel it incumbent upon me as an ambassador from the Marvel Cinematic Universe to point out that what we're talking about relates to the best line in any Marvel movie, which is in the last one.
It's clobbering time?
No, that's not in the Marvel. That's in the future of the Marvel universe. But no, when Thor says we have to go to Nidavellir, and Drax says that's a made-up word, Thor says all words are made up. And I really think that people watching Marvel movies have to think about that.
It's cool because isn't Thor like a himbo? Isn't his thing that he's not intellectual?
He's a himbo.
He's just a dude with a hammer.
But like the stupidest god is smarter than the smartest mortal.
That's true.
Yeah. But he is an idiot.
Yeah.
I know.
He's sort of a
He's got
dunderhead.
like a working class wisdom.
It's true. I mean, they didn't pick the sharpest Norse god to be this superhero.
No, I mean Thor is the common man. He's the god of all people.
The forge.
He's like a carpenter.
The hammer.
Yeah.
He just needs a sickle.
He's got some cool goats.
Yeah.
What else do you need?
He's got a flying bell. Anyway.
As Judy Sill would say, Jesus was a cross maker.
Oh yeah.
Good one.
As Indiana Jones would say, the cup of a carpenter.
The cup of a carpenter.
Or I guess as Gene Wolfe would say, a torturer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Well, we wrapped that up nicely. Tie a little bow on it.
So is Sev the Thor of this universe?
Yeah, I mean,
Kind
quite
of.
literally, he
Yeah, he's a
consumes
dumbass.
the drug so that he can be all people. He is the most everyman. He is Jupiter. That's why. That's why he fucks every girl he sees, because he is fecundity. He is the population in its most prosperous. He is the epitome.
It is very Zeus. Would be boning everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Deep in the bone zone. King of the gods.
Bone zone.
The bone zone.
I'm sorry that repulsed me. I mean it too. I feel bad that how disgusted that made me feel. I feel like I should like that, and I don't.
I'll make a point to say it to you more so that you have to deal with it.
Is it a thing that you say a lot?
I say it occasionally as a joke.
Liz has a comment.
About the bone zone?
The carpenters would say, I'm on top of the world looking down on creation.
The Carpenters. She's a little late to the party, but she had to get in there.
That is a joke.
Anyway.
I wish that the story that Sev gives us, kind of sums up to us in a couple paragraphs. I wish that got the whole chapter treatment on 119 when he talks about the wife. Okay, so the guy is out in the desert and he meets the people at the oasis, and he drinks the water, and then his wife goes back later because she's told by some wise machine, which is like whatever, and then she goes out to find him, and he's not there. The end. I want that whole story.
That's like a little bit like the fountain in Providence. That if you drink from this fountain in Providence, you'll never be happy anywhere else. And supposedly H.P. Lovecraft drank from it.
Well, he was certainly never happy.
Only fools are happy.
I have a question. That just popped in my mind that I haven't had time to think about. Do you guys think it's significant, and if so, why, that the last window that he sees is the Syriaca scene?
I haven't thought about that.
Totally.
I mean, I'm assuming it's significant, but what, like, is it because she is, like, the one that he shows mercy to? And
But
everyone...
she's also the one who told him the story behind the hierogrammates that we're meeting now.
Right.
These are the machines that have gone beyond humans and are trying to give humanity back to them. Like, that is the exposition of what we're getting, I think.
It's just a reminder. It's just a reminder.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that you're also right that he shows her mercy. And he shows her mercy by fucking up and not doing his job. Like, his success at compassion is his failure at responsibility. Which kind of ties into everything that's going on now.
Yeah.
Evil is good.
I was just flipping through, and it just seemed like a spot that caught me.
What am I hearing?
I'm sorry.
What
Is
are
that
you hearing?
Yeah, it was me. I'm done.
You made a dog panting sound?
No, I was trying to scrape something off of my computer.
Oh, okay.
Piece of schmutz.
Ah, schmutz.
Yeah.
Schmutz.
Schmutz. Schmutz.
This whole section reminds me of the last episode of Seinfeld where they have to, like, go to trial.
Yeah.
They have to face their many
God,
accusers.
The Good Samaritan law.
How sick would it have been if in Seinfeld all of those people that testified actually ended up fighting physically for the freedom of Jerry?
Freedom.
The freedom of Jerry.
Yeah.
That was the only clip show.
Yep.
No, there was another.
When?
There was a clip show. They did an hour-long clip show in like season 6 or 7, I want to say.
Yeah. There's at least 1 or 2 clip shows.
Ooh, you're questioning the scholar. Tim's locking
I
it
do not
right
claim to
now.
be a Seinfeld scholar.
What's
There's
that?
so much about Seinfeld I don't know.
No, I know. I'm saying Tim's the scholar. You're questioning the scholar.
Oh.
I mean it the other
Always-
way.
I'm the scholar.
Yeah, obviously.
Always
Seinfeld.
any clip show.
You're quoting chapter and verse, man. I don't know. I could not tell you. I've seen lots of Seinfeld, and I could not tell you, besides the final episode, because it stands out so much. I could not tell you, like, which one comes before which one's in what season. I could not tell you a single episode, the season number of a single episode. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
You can tell by the haircuts if they're early or late.
Or
Well,
George's job, like the job that George has, sometimes will give you
Sure,
some.
but I couldn't
something.
tell you.
Yeah,
I couldn't tell you a season number.
Yeah, I think I could. The show changes over time. Different production elements are added in over time. Yeah, like different character arcs, different shows,
But I
different
feel
relationships, different jobs.
Over the course of Seinfeld, you can see the golden age of television start. You can see sitcoms go from a 3-camera system in front of a live studio audience to sitcoms being made in a cinematic way. Seinfeld
Yeah,
is the interface between bad and good TV.
yeah. It's not a big deal now, but I think Seinfeld introduced people like going outside in like sitcoms.
Mm-hmm.
Seems very pedestrian now, but I guess at the time it was a big production
It
deal.
was groundbreaking. It changed
Okay.
everything.
Interesting.
Well, yeah, I mean, for a
Yeah.
long time, you just have a set with like 3 different rooms, and then
Yeah.
Right.
that's all you did. So.
Huh. You're right.
I Love Lucy did that, and then everybody did that. Prior to I Love Lucy, they didn't. It was, you made TV like you would make a movie. And then I Love Lucy.
Did I Love Lucy introduce the laugh track?
Yeah.
They
The laugh track is one of the most interesting conventions of sitcoms, in my opinion. It's so crazy.
They actually created like a machine, like there's like a specific machine that they created, sort of like a Mellotron or something that plays these laugh tracks, and that was a job for a while. It was
Different-
like punching in the laughs.
Different kinds of laugh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of it is live studio audience though, so I don't know if I Love Lucy actually had like a canned laugh track or if it was live.
It probably was live at that time.
Right.
But
Cheers was live.
I don't know.
anyways, fuck I Love Lucy. I love Lucille Ball.
Harsh.
But fuck that show.
Wait, what did you say?
Like Jerry Seinfeld,
Connor?
I've never seen an episode of it. I've never seen I Love
Connor,
Lucy.
what did you just say about Lucille Ball?
I love her.
You love Lucille Ball, but you hate I Love Lucy.
Yeah. Lucille Ball's act, her performance, like her being, her live shit is amazing.
I've never seen that.
Oh, really? She does.
Like
She
the-
does an amazing thing where she's playing Harpo Marx with Harpo Marx.
They did that in I Love Lucy. They had
Oh,
him
well,
come
it's-
on.
They also did it in vaudeville.
Right. Yeah.
I want to watch that. I'm gonna watch that.
Hate the sin, love the city.
Really? I think of them as I Love Lucy as like post Marx Brothers by a significant number of decades.
No.
Well, the Marx Brothers were
The Marx
working
Brothers
for like
were-
most of like early TV. I think. Like, I mean, Groucho had a show up through the '60s, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay. All right. I love Harpo Marx. That guy rules. Seriously, he's so funny.
I was Harpo for
I have
Halloween
to laugh
once in
again.
high school.
Oh, I thought it was funny.
And nobody ever talks about how much Chico rules, and that sucks.
I don't know Chico as much.
Well,
Oh,
great.
is Chico the Italian guy?
He's the one who's playing an Italian guy.
Elvis.
Yeah, right. That's
Ooh, the kitty's playing the keyboard.
Yep.
Like Chico.
Yeah, it's incredible what great musicians they are.
Yeah.
There was when I lived at the bank, there were two cats that would like. There
How's
was
it going?
one cat, Carson's old cat,
Thank you.
Chi-Chi, may he rest in peace, who was like a really great piano player. And he like, you would hear it in the middle of the night. I always like wished I could have gotten a recording of it. But you would hear it in the middle of the night and it would just sounded so good. And then also it would be a lot of times in concert with him and the other cat who lived there, may he also rest in peace. They would like do that like yelling at each other thing. You know? They're just like, "Wah, wah." Or like the other cat, Beazle, would do that and Chi-Chi would play the piano and it sounded so good. But it would always happen in the middle of the night when you're like in bed and you'd hear it from upstairs. But it was really good.
My two cats
I'll never
have
forget it.
totally different styles of playing. Melvin is a drone guy. He sits on the keyboard and refuses to move and will let it ring. And then Josie is like grindcore. Like she like runs across the piano keys like once or twice and then it's done.
Nice.
Melvin's correct.
Yeah. Sometimes he's called, his band is called Drone Chicken because he just buns up on the keys and it drones out, and if you try to move him, he's really pissed.
Chi-Chi had this really like sensitive way of playing. Like it really was like he was playing. He would just kind of like he had like
Melon.
movements. I don't know. It was cool. It was really cool. Unlike any other cat I've seen on the piano.
Does anybody watching the feed right now have anything to say about the musicality of their own cats or cats that they know?
Or does it?
We'll
I think
put it
this
out
loops
there.
it back to the communication thing. Communication precedes words.
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say that I would guess that but I would guess that people who have cats who think that their cats aren't communicating to them probably are the kind of people who have miserable cats.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like my cats are communicating to me constantly. And they're always
Yeah.
assholes.
Oh man,
They're
my cat communicates to me all the time, and he's the sweetest boy. But I also do that thing where I give him what he wants.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I don't, I have boundaries. I'm not gonna let him eat off my plate or anything. But like, I do, like, I don't know. I felt like he was getting bored with his food, and I got him another kind. And now he's like snarfing it down.
And from their point of view, aren't we holy slaves? Aren't we hierodules?
basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
will
say that
proudly
my
wear
cats
the
are assholes,
mantle.
but they're also perfect sweet boys too. So it's it's a tricky dichotomy. See, here
I will
comes
proudly
one.
wear the mantle of holy cat slave. Oh.
Remember the homunculus in the last?
Oh.
I remember it, Tim.
Is the homunculus like basically like from Yasad? Like that's the way that it communicates. Like it communicates sub-verbally.
There's an implication of that, right?
Well, Afeta talks about how they communicate with silence, which is kind of similar. Like she seems to be like, or they seem to be vibing off of the sounds around them.
They cancel sounds until they create the sound they want.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of different. The homunculus guy, I guess, sends out little vibrations and reads those vibrations to you.
It's cool to think how peaceful Yasad is with every room having some kind of trickle going constantly on in it.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Kenny would love that.
Kenny loves a trickle.
He sleeps with the white noise machine, He's like very sensitive to, I don't know. He
sound.
likes that.
When my office was at a place that isn't my house, one of my coworkers had like a little white noise machine, and it was on from like the minute I came in. And then one day, like they were leaving early, and they're like, "Hey, do you want me to turn this off?" And I was like, "What is that?" They're like, "Oh, it's a white noise machine." They turned it off, and the silence was awful. Like the absence of it like felt physically disturbing, and I was like, turn it back on. I need that shit.
Yeah, see, that's like Kenny style. I feel like I actually always feel like relieved when it gets turned off. Even though, because I'm not a sensitive sleeper, so I don't really care. It doesn't really bother me, but I like love it when it's not.
I'm not normally bothered by having that kind of thing on, but because I didn't know that it was there and then it got turned off, like just the absence of it was like really unsettling. And then when you turn
I
it
love
back
that
on,
moment in the morning when I turn that stupid thing off.
when you turn it back
I
on,
love it.
it's like being on the Enterprise. It's like there's that like low level like
Uh-huh.
hum all the time, and it's I don't know, it's very comforting.
Well,
There's a YouTube channel that just has 3-hour videos of various spaceships from sci-fi franchises. So you could listen to the sound of the Enterprise, or you could listen to the sound of Serenity,
Nice.
what have you.
Wow.
Do you remember
Like
they were
a-
gonna make
like a
sounds
YouTube
for like
channel.
remember they were gonna make sounds for like the electric cars to make because people kept getting hit by them because you can hear them.
They have sounds that are actually it's not just electric cars, I think, but now because so much
The hybrids that shut off.
well, it's hybrids, and like even non-hybrid cars are like the engineering has got them to the point where they don't really need to be all that noisy, but they actually have like piped in, like there's a piped in sound of engine noise that's there, because without it people are really like concerned that the car's not running right or something.
Right. Anyhow.
It's interesting to think of that as a metaphor for maybe things besides sound. Like how that could be applied to society, like vestiges of things that we don't need, but that, I mean, it's kind of like when they're talking about Baldander's castle ruling those little cities. Like people are so used to Baldander's watching, or like the people in that castle watching them all the time and having these weapons that could destroy them, that they act as if they're there even though they're not there.
Yeah. Well, also, like, just being in a city, there's so much ambient sound that happens.
Yeah.
And if you go out where it's like you're far enough away from like a road or whatever, it's wild.
We've got
It
a
happened to me
Yeah, but then there's
yesterday.
no ambient sound. It's just you're not used. It's not the sound you're used to hearing. Like there's
But it's not near. But decibel count wise, it's far quieter. Like it's really light.
Yeah.
Actually, like silence in the city is actually like very loud.
there's Ronsky's got some input, which is if I had an electric car, the sound it would have would just be a Lil Jon song.
Okay.
It just checks in every now and then. He's like, yeah.
Okay, let's wolf it here for a second. I feel like we've had a good.
Let's say page 125 has one of the most Severian moments in the world that I really like in the section, where he's talking about the windows that are like displaying scenes from his own life.
Yeah.
And he's like, what's the thing? Is it the
Charmed.
He's like, oh, they're not that good.
Yeah, they remember things less skillfully than my own memory, and there was something subtly mistaken about each view.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so good. Like his, it's right there for him to see what is happening, and he can't. It's never gonna go through. He's
Well,
never gonna get
he does figure it out, like on the next.
a little
page,
bit. Well, he
maybe.
said like, yeah, these are how other people might have seen it.
Yeah.
He still doesn't make the full leap to the idea that his way of seeing it is just
It's
is
just
like
his
mistaken
way.
as theirs.
Yeah.
I love it.
Well, I feel like one of the funniest things about him is that he always talks about having perfect memory or whatever, but like the problem with that is that his perception is bad. So like he's remembering his perception of something, but his perception is bad, which is why you get all these holes where he's like, and I don't know, I was really distracted there for a little while, and I'm not sure what happened in between this point and this point. And and that's his perfect memory, remembering that.
Right.
Which is, it's like, yeah, I don't know. I just always think that's so funny.
Yeah. I mean, he is the ego. He could not see things the way that he sees them, and then could also not, like, accept that there's another way that's more valid.
Or just as valid, anyway.
Yeah. Although I would argue that there's, I mean, we can only approximate it, but that there's a view that includes the ego and other things that is more valid than the
Sure.
ego's position.
Super ego.
I don't know. I that's not how I think of the term. I think of the term superego as in being the foil to the ig.
I was just trying to joke.
Yeah, okay. I thought
It's super because it's good. It's better.
It's above.
Yeah. What else do I have in this?
Ego plus.
That's right. The new badge.
The examination.
This chapter has Severa riding an Elzabo.
Yeah.
Is that just like a weird term for the she's like, you know, inside the Elzabo? Or is she riding the Elzabo?
He's saying that he's saying like she. No, don't worry, that's not a real person. She's dead. And then Gunny's like, well, she's standing next to me. Everyone's there.
Okay.
Everyone's there. On there.
It's a clip show.
It's a clip show.
It's a clip.
And her and the Elzabo are separate things, even in Severian's mind, so they each get their own Aquaster.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting, but he never met Severa. Or did he meet Severa? No. So it's just a made-up Severa. I wish they went into that a little bit more.
But he can't see her. Remember, Gunny has to say she's riding on the back. You know, Severian doesn't have a picture of her body in his mind.
Oh, he doesn't. Okay, I guess I was confused by that. So that's why
Maybe in the dark.
he just
Maybe
hears
it is sort of like Tim's idea. Maybe it's like a literal representation of the metaphorical concept for a riding Elzabo.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
Yeah.
because like people are like essentially back from the dead. Maybe because she did meet the Severin side of Elzabo. It's not necessarily Severin of Elzabo. That Severin did meet Severian. You know.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But Severian didn't meet her.
Yeah.
You met the Elzabo.
Yeah.
Can anyone else hear the rain right now?
Yeah, I can see it. It looks great.
It's really loud.
It's really nice.
I can't hear it, but I can see it.
I don't think it's raining here yet.
And
I feel like
raining.
it's apropos that I can hear it on top of my head right now because of the it's constant water trickling.
well, also,
Can you see the name?
I don't know if you guys can hear that there's piano being played at my house, so that usually I can't. It's
I
louder
can't
than
hear
the
that.
rain.
I can't hear it.
I don't know if you
Well,
can
that's
see
my
it.
cue to pee anyway.
Oh yeah, peeing. That's
Team rules.
Pune's awesome.
pretty cool.
Oh no.
Oh
Okay.
Are you okay, Jordan?
yeah, I forgot to spin the camera back around. Yeah, fine. Here I am.
Connor, how could that was really great when your camera was down and you were squatting over it like you were in like an Onyx video.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I was just having fun.
That was cool.
Thank you.
Seems like that's probably not comfortable as a long-term solution, but
It was. I did it because I thought it would look cool, and then after a while, my body didn't like it any longer.
yeah.
Your arch enemy,
My body, you fucking A right,
your
man.
nemesis.
I can't wait to be shed of it.
I've been watching Galaxy Express 3.9, and in every single episode, the protagonist makes a point to mention how excited he is to get a mechanical body. And that's like
Cartoon?
that's
Well,
what.
that's not what I'm looking for.
Well, it didn't say it was
I just
exactly
want to
the same.
exist in the dreams of others.
I think I got a completely flat seltzer.
Ouch.
Fuck that.
Send
Call
it back.
Polar up.
It's kind of, I don't know, it might be nice.
Tweet at them.
Write them a letter and say you want free salsa for the rest of your life.
Tweet at them. They'll probably send you a case.
Polar, the wolf pack is coming for you.
Ooh, the wolves and the wolves and the bears.
Yeah, there you go.
Like a sports team.
Bears win. So.
Isn't there a cat and bear thing supposedly running through Wolf's books?
Cats
I
and
feel like
bears.
this is something I.
In the secret, that are in, like, always in the, no, what is it, what is this house called?
What?
In his house.
The house has
Ozark's
blue?
house. Yeah, the house has blue. There's, like, wolves, the wolves that live, like, in
Oh,
the
yeah.
secret.
The dog people. Kind of.
In house? The secret house.
The Cynophalics. Also, what makes sense is like wolves are they're Rome, right? That's the tutelary animal of Rome, and this is all supposed to be about like it's a Severian is Claudius, you know? Am I making sense? Am I saying words?
Those are words.
I think
You're making words.
Okay.
You're making words.
Man, that's such a cool part of Citadel or whatever book that is. That there's like wolves wild in the house, absolute. Like there's rats in other people's houses. It's just like.
Are they white
Well-
wolves? Is that what they are? There's a white wolf too, right? Is that true?
I forget what color they are.
They're white wolf might be something else. I don't remember.
Yeah.
Hey,
it
where's
could
our
I'll
friend
take-
Sonic? Sanic.
I'll take this.
Where's Sanic?
Oh, where is Santa?
What?
Where's Sanic Shazbot?
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, where's the Shazbot?
Where the
Is
hell is
anybody
Santa?
chatting in?
be- Shazbot ditched us.
We probably talked about politics too much in the first 15 minutes.
Oh, maybe.
Well, also possible that the stream wasn't happening for the first half hour.
No, it was working, and then when I switched over to a wired connection, it shut off. So we were only down for like 5-10 minutes.
Are you sure? Because that's not what it seemed like based on what Caroline was saying to me.
I don't know. Maybe not.
Because before that, yeah. Anyway, whatever. Doesn't matter.
Well,
Nobody's chatting in now.
Nobody's perfect.
Ronsky and Caroline are both in the chat. So
Yeah, they're in there.
But I mean, are they saying anything we need to know about?
not currently.
Hildegren is represented by bears.
But he's a
Well,
badger.
He's all bears are badgers. Well, Arctothers are badgers, but Arctothers are bears.
They're just really big badgers.
Bears, they're big bears.
Or they
Badgers are little bears.
badgers or small bears. I don't know. Maybe.
Is that true? Then why are they badgers? Oh, okay. If Michelle says so.
Yeah. Or somebody said it to Michelle. Anyhow,
Yeah. What do we want to? Where do we want to go? Anybody got a?
I don't have another thing written down until page 136 in chapter 19. I don't know if that's skipping too far ahead from where we just were.
no, go ahead.
Oh, I like this thing on 136 about the exaltants.
Oh yeah.
This seemed also very of the moment of America. I wanted Thecla because it's the last paragraph. I wanted Thecla because she was so much better than I, socially and morally, and she wanted me because I was so much better than she and her friends, just because I did something necessary. Most exaltants don't on Earth. They have a great deal of power, and they pretend they're important. They tell the Autarch that they're ruling their peons, and they tell their peons they're ruling the Commonwealth. But they don't really do anything, and in their hearts they know it. That's our fucking Congress. Like
That's the
councils
most
and stuff.
explicitly political I feel like Wolf gets in these series right there.
It's and it's like so on display right now.
Yeah.
Just talking to each other about how and talking to doing the theater on TV of being in charge all the time and like where the fuck are they? We're having a plague. Where is the shit? Where is anything?
Connor, you seemed like you were having a reaction.
I am.
Do you want to try to inwordify it?
I kind of don't.
Okay, that's fine.
Like, I don't know. I think that's wrong and right.
What's wrong and right?
Well, on one hand, I think that our Congress is doing way too much. You know, like I think what he's describing here, I have two thoughts that are exactly the opposite of each other, but are both true at the same time. Where like the exultance for what Congress should be doing is soaking up all the power and not letting it be used so that people can just live their lives. Which is not what I think is going on so much right now. People are constantly trying to say this is what we should be doing instead of just, see, this is not working. I don't want to talk about it.
Okay. No one's going to force you, Connor. I was just asking.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
It's nice to be asked sometimes, even if you don't want to do it.
It's nice to feel wanted.
Totally.
On the page before that, I just like how I do like how explicit it is when on 135 when he's asking against whom do you play and she says entropy. I really like that.
Yeah.
And then he says it is said that game is always lost, and she says we know. I just really like that part. That's a really good part. Like we know, but we do it anyway. We're trying to do this thing anyway. And also, it's like a cycle.
But also, beating entropy is giving into it. Like, and that's what this book is about. Right?
Like, I think him remaking Earth, letting it be flooded, is like a giving in.
It's entropic. It's getting rid of the old Tower of Babel Earth, collapsing it, and then because entropy is just potential order, like order is potential entropy. It's a Taoist thing.
I think of entropy as just being like the decay brought on by time.
And sure. But that decay is also not decay, like order comes out of, like time is entropy. There is no, like the only way that time can exist is that entropy happens. It's the only way you can notice time. But that entropic decay, it allows order to be created because order happens within time.
Yeah.
You don't like that?
And that's not that I don't like it. I'm thinking about it. You know, these are big ideas here. I'm trying to grasp onto the sparrow's tail.
I'm concerned that I've gotten too dogmatic about my thoughts about time.
It's okay to be dogmatic, but you know, you got to become more Atheta-like and talk about it in grounded terms that Earthlings like myself can understand.
It's hard.
This is why he doesn't like talking anymore.
Yeah.
Language fails.
But it's like that thing. It's like that we were talking about before, where like the one thing is saving the other thing, so that the one thing can save the other thing, and there's like collapse and like there's building and then collapse and then building and then collapse, and that's like the spiral thing that happens. It's like a continuously progressing circle or whatever.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So in the one way, it's like, yes, you're both fighting against entropy and allowing entropy to happen at the same time. It's like the same thing. It's all moving kind of in that cycle or whatever.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
how I think of it. So it's not like it has to be. I feel like that reaction that you had about, like, if you fight against it or you give into it, I feel like it's like unnecessarily final. It's like you're doing both at the same time.
Huh? I am?
No, one is, or they are, or whatever. Like,
Well, it's about perception, right? If you are struggling against entropy, it's just entropy is winning
yeah.
because you're struggling against it. But if you give in to entropy, you win because now you're working with it, and that is moving forward.
Yeah. You try to channel it.
I mean, it's back to the fucking child thing. If you're trying to get a child to do what you want, and it's not doing it, you feel frustrated. But if you're just like, what do you need? And the child tells you, and you work with the child, then you feel fine. It's not frustrating anymore.
Yeah.
Give in, let go.
But so then is that argument that they shouldn't be, that this, like, labor that they're doing is futile?
Wait, which playing again against entropy?
Yeah. Or just the labor of the hierogrammates or whatever.
I mean, it's that, well, again, it's like it's only futile if you're trying to win. And I don't think they are. But when they're talking to Severian, because of the way his mind works, that's what it sounds like. I don't know, man. I mean, I think that's what that's the, like, it is said that is a game that's always lost. We know.
Yeah.
You know, like they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
My computer's about to die.
Got a cable?
I do. It's no longer dying.
When
I like how many different kind of, like, ways she tries to describe these concepts to him over and over again.
The rafts on the checkerboard part throws me for a loop, but I love it. And through this talk, I think I'm kind of grasping it a little bit. Like,
Yeah.
the rafts in this instance, I guess, are different steps in progressing their cause, but as they move to each step, it affects the step and affects the other steps. I think when I first read it, I thought that they were literally talking about going between ships. I thought the rafts were kind of like different ships in different areas of space-time. But I guess that's not it. The rafts are more like different endeavors.
Yeah, it's a metaphor.
Yeah. It's crazy.
What happens next? In the book?
There is a. There in this is the section that we just read, or just the section that we're talking about right now. It that thing that we were trying to get, that we were trying to remember where it happens, where it's explained what the deal is with him, just like knocking out the power on the ship when he tries to use the claw.
Yeah.
That was in here. We can talk about
Yeah.
that. Maybe we don't have to talk about it because it just gets explained. But I'm glad that I'm glad that it was here, so now we know where it was. Because it was kind of like confusing me that I couldn't remember where that happens.
It brings a little bit of clarity, but it also brings in new questions because she notes how it had blood on it, and that was part of where the power came from as well. That his cells were on it. Like, where is that section?
144.
Okay, so that's a little bit further along. All right, so yeah, it was So so he had the original claw, and that one had some powers, and then it was destroyed, and then he found the new claw on the beach, which I suspect is the original claw, right? He finds it, and somehow that claw makes its way back in time for the people find it and whatever. But anyway, so he has the new claw, and he shows it to her. Oh, and then she looks. She didn't even look at it, but she knows that it's saturated with his blood, and the blood has the cells, and the claw itself may have had power. So while he was using it to derive power from the planet and from the sun, it still seems like Afeta is uncertain exactly of how all his power is coalescing.
Well, I think part of like this and the moving rafts thing is to say that like even though there are kind of these like even though they have a certain amount of power, there's still, and the thing with like the ripple, like when you throw, like time is like a wave, and when you throw a stone in it, the ripples affect the other waves. The whole thing that they're doing is not like a precision like scalpel surgery. It's like it takes a lot of trial and error and time and effort, and like things go in their favor and things go not in their favor, and it's not like an exact science what they're doing. Like it's like everything is moving around all the time, and then every time you move a piece, it moves all the other pieces, and you're trying to constantly like reassess what's going on. And I think that's like a part of the reason that she like keeps trying to explain it to him in these different ways. I think that's like part of what she's trying to get across. And she says a bunch of times also in this whole section that like you think that we're like all powerful, but we're not. Like we're trying to do this thing, and it's like a very difficult task, and we're just going along trying to do it, but we're not like gods, even though you feel the need to think of us that way. Yeah. I feel like that's like a lot of what's getting hammered in this section, personally.
I guess it just still leaves questions about the claw. I mean, going back to your point about the explanation of the claw's power, I feel like that's still unclear in my mind, as it should be, I guess. But I just don't feel like her explanation ties it up.
Well, she's kind of guessing about it.
Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, she could be totally wrong, too. I mean, she's about her theory that that Severian channels the power of either a planet or a close star through the claw. She might not know. But I don't know if anyone else has thoughts about like that section towards the end of 144, where she's kind of describing it, and then he shows her the claw, and she's not even interested in it. She like looks at the scar, I guess on her finger, on his finger.
On his hand, yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, I think also a lot of what happens in this whole book is like really trying to to me, at least this is what comes up for me, is like hammering home that like all of this shit is ultimately about like an internal journey. And like that's why he has the Commonwealth inside of him, and like he is the ship, and everything that's going on in the ship is going on inside of him, and it's like the claw and the blood. It's all just coming back to like that this whole thing is an allegory for like an internal journey or whatever. I just feel like that is constantly getting pushed in this book in particular.
Yep.
I mean, that's like what all of the books are about, but I feel like this book is like exists as the kind of like capstone to make sure that people understand that that's what the books are about or whatever.
Yeah, definitely. Like he literally has to face his demons in this. So, you know, he has to face his past. He has to relive, you know, and which he doesn't actually spend much time reflecting on, but he does have to like relive like all of the past sins and misdeeds he's done against others. And it's interesting that his evaluation ultimately is like, you know, like, yeah, I hurt all of you people, but I had to. Like that's what I had to do in the moment. That was the right thing to do. Don't you agree? That's earlier when before all this, before the trial happens, or maybe it's not earlier. I don't know, but it's before the real trial happens, and he's just hanging out in there, and all those people are just sitting there watching him all day.
There's a quote on 143 where Feta says, "You misunderstand us," at the very top, the first full paragraph. "And though we know so much more than you, our gold is true gold. God is true gold is often at the cost of our lives." And that links into this is an eternal trial thing, because I'm fairly certain that that's a reference to a famous alchemical phrase, "Our
Sure.
gold is not the common gold,"
Yeah.
which is like meant to explain that alchemy is all metaphorical, and it's about psychology and doing work on yourself, not about transmitting physical gold.
The black stone behind the sun.
Yeah. So it's almost right there, like in the Feta's mouth. Like this whole endeavor is about making oneself into a new person that you're supposed to be.
Right, which is like the thing about. I was gonna say this earlier, and I'm not sure why I didn't, but it was coming up for me a lot earlier in the section when we were talking about the just the idea, the like trying to preserve the old way versus like destroying that to create the new way or whatever. That's like the main meat of that is like just how the discomfort you personally have when you're trying to like become a better person or like whatever the fuck you're trying to become. Like whenever you're trying to kind of like study and like learn and grow as a person within the world or whatever, it's like there's always this kind of like discomfort that comes with taking any other like step, because you have to like leave certain things behind, and that's like a thing that happens on a societal scale and a personal scale and all of those scales. But I feel like the personal scale is often left out of the discussion.
I really like also in this chapter 20, yeah, the kind of explicit talk about how events in the future have effect on events in the past.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, where you talk about the faces that the people have, that, you know, carry the face of doom if they're like are to be doomed.
Yeah, I feel that way a lot. I feel like almost on a daily basis, this idea Like when he talks about when Afeda talks about the like time is like waves, and when you drop a pebble into the water,
Yeah.
it creates a disturbance that goes in every direction. I feel that I don't know, just instinctually in life experiences, I feel that to be extremely true. Like coming up into like finally getting to an event where I'm like, this event I know previously there was things that happened that are linked to this thing that's happening now. Not those things didn't cause this. This caused them.
I've experienced that in mushroom trips. Like I remember being at a party at the Copycat wearing a shirt that had, that classic Cat Attack shirt that had the Eye in the Pyramid on it, and like remembering 12-year-old me reading the Illuminati trilogy, looking forward to me being at that party, and having the person tripping at that party look at that child and see that child seeing the older self. Like I've experienced those time cells before. Has anybody else done that? It's really fun. Take some mushrooms.
I think I experienced maybe not as in like a tangible sense as that, but I feel
Try
like
mushrooms.
well, yeah, sure. I mean, obviously try mushrooms, but I feel like there have been various points in my adult life where I've been kind of like I don't know if it's necessarily like the fulfillment of a sort of like fantasy about adult life that I had when I was younger, but or if it's like I don't know, it can feel kind of like oh like the person I am now is the kind of person that I thought would be like really cool when I was 12, or something like that. And it hasn't it's not like a consistent thing, but every now and then it'll kind of hit.
Well, because I think that the 12-year-old is thinking of many different things that you could be. So it's not like inevitably at some point you've thought about I don't want to commit to what I was about to say.
I think it's true. I mean, I think it could be seen from either perspective. And if I was on mushrooms, I'm sure I'm sure that river flows both ways a lot more easily when you're kind of unstuck.
I forgot to take my mushrooms this morning. I'm now realizing. Not too late, I guess.
I feel like I want to say something about the relationship between symbols and reality
Say it.
too. Like there's this Gravesian idea about like myth, that like that I think people resist to a degree of myth comes from real life. The story comes is like the solar myth comes from we're describing what the sun does. But then because we have that story, the myth also starts to dictate what happens in real life. Our culture starts doing this because we have this myth.
Yeah.
So although the story is fake because it grows out of because it's just a representation of what's actually happening, then it becomes more real because it starts dictating what's actually happening. And then again, we've fallen into a helix structure, which I feel like is something that happens in the story and in real life when Afida and Severian have sex.
Yeah, I feel like that paragraph is so cheesy.
Mm-hmm.
Really, I find it profound.
I knew you would. When I was reading it, I thought, man, this is so cheesy. And I was like, man, Connor loves this paragraph.
Yeah, because it's just like we had sex and stars were born, but then also an actual literal star is being born because they had sex.
Is that what's going on?
Yeah, totally. Laying on my back, I entered Yesod, or rather Yesod closed about me. I mean,
Yeah.
dick and vagina. It was only then that I knew I had never been there. Stars in their billions spurted out from me, fountains of suns that for an instant I feel I knew how universes were born, all folly, but also that's exactly what's happening. They're creating the white fountain right now in a very real physical way, but also Severian is the metaphor for that, and also their sex is the metaphor for that.
It kind of happens in Promethea too.
Yeah, totally. Promethea is about exactly this.
Yeah.
Reality displaced it. The kindling of the torch that whips the shadows to their corners, with them all the winged phase of fancy. So, like, that metaphor of sex is chased away because it's actually, there was something born between Yasad and Priya when I met with Afida upon that divan in the circling room. Both metaphor and practical.
It's a good part.
Stories are more real than reality because reality is born out of stories, even though they're born out of reality.
This is a minor point, but on 145, I thought it was interesting. No, not. I've got something to back you up with what I'm saying, Connor. This is a tiny little thing to throw in that big well that you said. But on 145, he makes a point of explaining how he has no dreams when he sleeps.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think that because he's where dreams occur.
Right.
He is like Yasad is where you go when you dream.
Right.
So I feel like that's, yeah, like you don't, I don't know. So for some reason, to me, that seems like proof or support for what you're saying. The interaction between the world and dreams. It's like dreams aren't a thing that your body does individually from other people.
Right.
Dreams are a process, a collective process that takes place in a place.
Well, and and reality, a dream dreams reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The symbol's working on us.
Yeah. Now it's my turn to be. Thank you, everyone. That was very cathartic for me.
I also think it's really funny how since Connor, since you sit with your computer on your lap, whenever you get really excited and you're talking, your screen is like bouncing around. It's really funny.
Yeah, I just forget about it.
It's funny.
Well, cool. One moment, I'll be back.
Where'd Connor go?
Disappeared.
What?
Urinating.
I don't know.
He became the fountain.
Oh, I went to
He
the
went to create. He's going to create the Brook Madrigal.
That's right.
Jordan, do you remember when we were playing Shadowrun and your avatar was a fountain?
Yeah, with the lead singer of Alice in Chains perched gracefully upon my ledge.
Yeah.
We should play that game over Google Hangout.
Yeah.
Connor was worried about the amount of work that he would have to do to make it work digitally, I think. But I don't know. We've Tim and I have been playing Miseries and Misfortunes with Discord, and it's been fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if Connor just put all his little note cards into text documents, he could copy paste the contents of them into chat. But maybe, I mean, that's probably
They're probably already in spreadsheets. I think it was just overwhelming for him to try to because he's not a digital man.
Connor's back.
Hi.
Hi.
Back with a bang.
Yeah. What did I miss?
We just talked about
missing that?
Shadowrun.
Oh man, I love Shadowrun.
We should play
Well,
it.
do you remember when Jordan's avatar was a fountain?
Oh yeah. Yes,
Yeah,
I
it's
do.
kind of similar, kind of related.
One of my favorite parts of quarantine is that I've gotten really into talking to people on the Shadowrunners Union on Facebook about how we run Shadowrun games.
Are they all perplexed by the way that you do it?
No, everybody has a different perplexing way that they do it.
All right.
We should do it.
It's really beautiful and fun.
Cool.
GMing is an art.
It is. It's such a strange art.
Yeah, it's very weird. I mean, I do it completely different from you. And your way of doing it is fascinating to me.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah.
It's fun. Mason does it a very different way too. Ryan and I have played under Mason before.
It was a long long time ago.
It was.
I imagine he's better now.
I don't know, because I don't think he's done it since.
Well, life experiences in the. He's directed a lot of plays in the middle, and I assume that would inform a new GMing experience.
Perhaps.
Hopefully.
I think that maybe Mason works differently than the way that you're thinking.
Okay.
I think Mason's more of a straight line.
Sorry, Mason.
He's not going to watch it.
It's neither good nor bad. It's just different. It's gotten him to where he is right now, which is way beyond where I expected him to be.
Mason got me into these books.
Far out.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I think this copy of Urth that I have is his. That he was like, you gotta read it. Here, take mine, and I never gave it back.
He's haunting us then.
He's doing very well.
It's
What's
good.
he up to?
He's one of two people who run Adult Swim in Los Angeles, kind of.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm proud of him. Though I don't understand.
How it happened.
I don't. One, I don't understand how he can do that. I don't know.
We all know Mason. It's surprising to all of us, I think.
Well, just how he can tolerate his life now is odd to me.
You mean like working like a legit thing?
Well, and he's not himself, even though he's being completely himself. Like, I've been Mason's boss. I've tried to give him assignments and get him to be able to be versatile and evolve within an evolving system. And he doesn't do that. But now he is that. It's so interesting. I wish that I could have watched the process of him becoming what he is now, because I don't know how it possibly could have happened.
Maybe you found the true gold.
What was that, Mark?
Maybe you found the true gold.
Yes, I do think so.
The true Mason gold.
The black man hiding behind Mason.
Did you say that he's one of two people running Adult Swim? Can you just elaborate on that a little bit?
In Los Angeles. In Los Angeles, when Mason moved there, they had just started. Also, just the live streams, not the pre-made stuff.
Okay.
But there's just two people there doing that, and Mason is one of them.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It means that, does he, control he does the computer part that makes everything, go on TV?
He controls it. The two of them do everything. They make the shows. They come up with the shows.
Oh, really? Really? That too? Well,
Yeah. And that happened because, he and his girlfriend in South Carolina, he was going nowhere in South Carolina, and he and his girlfriend were treating each other horrible to the point where he had to get kicked out of the entire state. He had nowhere to go, and just ended up being like, I guess I'm going to go home to San Diego, and just on an off chance, he asked the person that he had met for 2 weeks a year prior, can you give me a job? And she was like, yes, and now he lives the most perfect life that he ever could have hoped for.
wonderful.
Ask. Yeah, I guess you just gotta ask. It's the secret.
Wait, and he's back with his girlfriend, right?
Right, they're getting married in August.
Wonderful.
November, I guess, or if marriages happen anymore.
And here is the moral of the story: stay the fuck out of North Carolina.
South Carolina.
Yeah, seriously.
Or was it South Carolina?
South Carolina.
Stay the fuck
North
out.
Carolina's nice.
Seriously. Let's
I
go.
read a really great argument one time that if we want to build a wall to keep terrorists at bay, then we just have to build a wall around the Carolinas, because every successful attempt at terrorism outside of September 11th on American soil has originated in the Carolinas.
What?
Yeah, because they have this, like, there's this psycho-Christian cult there, the one that thinks you have to marry off a girl as soon as she has puberty, as soon as she hits puberty, because an unmarried adult woman is danger. Like, they're based in the Carolinas.
Wow.
Anyway,
Can we go back to the
Jordan's
book now?
right out of the Carolinas.
Can we go back to the book now that we talked about games and
Yeah.
Mason for a really long time? And it's 1:30 almost.
Yeah, I think we're running out of steam.
I think that might be one.
Can we just? Well, we could stop if you guys want, or we can push through a little more.
I'd honestly like. I think we're kind of at the point where I'm not going to have a whole lot more to say.
Yeah,
Does somebody have something to say?
the only other thing I have written down that we haven't hit so far is the ovum stuff.
Oh, well, let's talk about that.
It's cool. I like the ovum thing.
Where?
It's on page 160, where she said, you think women produce ovums to make another woman.
Oh, right.
Ovum produce women to make another ovum.
Oh, yeah, which is what we were talking about with the story in Truth.
Yeah. And with the humans and the hierogrammates and the
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
and the relationship between master
This
and
thing.
servant.
I was reading this book that's really good, and there's this aspect of it. So, like, these people colonize another planet, and they form a symbiotic relationship with this plant. And the whole book, or so much of the book, is about, like, well, it's the plant. The plant's basically training. It's not even a question in the book. It's like, yeah, the plant is training the humans to, like, take care of it. But in return, it's protecting and, like, their lives are good because of their relationship with the plant. But it's really cool. I feel like that's that master servant who is, like, indebted to kind of question that we've been talking about throughout the Book of the New Testament discussion. That's all.
What was the book?
It's called Semiosis.
Oh yeah, I think you talked about that before. I think
Yeah, I've been talking about it. I've been singing its praises around town.
Yeah.
I recommend it. It's cool. It's good.
Nice.
I feel like there's a thing in this about people and cultures, too. I think that cultures think that they created us to serve them.
Culture has.
Yeah, I think cultures think that they're more real than us.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like we look to Hollywood to see what's real, even though it's like a stupid, crappy reflection of what happens to us.
Right. Well,
Is that like
It's
something like
interesting
that?
when you watch a show and you can tell that a person who's written it hasn't left LA in a really long time. I feel like that
Yeah.
happens. That happens a lot.
A
Where
lot
you
of
start
shows.
to detect like their idea of universal experiences are completely rooted in living in LA.
yeah.
Or like the New York Times in New York.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, they're so bad about that.
Yeah, fuck the New York Times.
I mean,
Agreed.
it is their local newspaper, but like also doesn't reflect every person who's in New York experience either.
Well,
at
it's
all.
also like definitely of the like, I don't know, whatever, the like liberal news media
Yeah.
sphere too.
That like all people aspire to live in New York. We all
Yeah,
wish we
you can-
could.
You can live in New York no matter where you live.
Yeah.
You just have to like ignore a lot of other things.
Has anybody here seen Ron Howard's movie, The Paper?
No.
One of my favorite movies. Michael Keaton has this awesome freak out in it, where he says he's been trying to get a job at. Michael Keaton works at basically the Post. some rinky-dink daily, and he has the opportunity to get a job at the thing that is the New York Times, and Spalding Gray tells Michael Keaton, "You just blew your chance to work here," and he has this huge rant of like, "Well, guess fucking what? I don't fucking care. Oh, you just lost your chance to cover the world," is what Spalding Gray says to Michael Keaton, and Michael Keaton is like, "I don't. Guess fucking what? I don't fucking care. I don't live in the fucking world. I fucking live in New York, so fuck you." And it's amazing. Because it's like even the New York Times isn't reflective of what's going on in New York. On the street level.
Right.
I feel like the New Yorker is probably worse about that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But there's definitely a cult of people who I've been around them. Here's the list of things that the New York Times says that we do now, so I have to go through and do these things to check them off my list so that I can be in existence. Sorry to anybody who's listening that is that way.
I'm not sorry.
They don't have time to listen to this.
The New York Times.
Yeah, I think that we don't probably have a big overlap of audience, would be my guess.
Well, the New York Times
Well,
hasn't written us up
when I
yet,
said
so
it in one of their faces.
maybe
There's
when
good journalism in there. There's good journalists who work for it, but there is definitely an ideology that it's part of now that is bad.
The overall worldview of it is very bad.
Right. Highly neoliberal.
Yes, sometimes there are good articles in it.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the best I can say for it.
It's like the prize. It's American hegemony to a degree too. Like when the people dropped off the iPads in that African town that had no one in the town was literate. The children of the town discovered the iPads and turned them on by the end of the day, and then by the end of the week they were teaching their parents English.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I was talking to my coworker at Johns Hopkins about this and how it's really cool, except I had a problem with why are they still in English? We're not really empowering this culture if we're still making them operate within English. And the guy was like, "No, I think that's good. Everybody should be able to raise themselves up to be Americans." And he was like,
No. He
he's
consciously
like
said that.
a liberal, good guy kind of person, but had this fucked up idea.
Well,
I didn't realize that they consciously knew that they thought that. That's amazing. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I had no idea. I thought that it was just like in the shadows of their thinking, but it's just right up front. That's cool.
Yeah.
Good for them. They said.
Well, it depends. Yeah, I mean, it's like, yeah, some people say the quiet part loud.
True.
Are there Asian, as in from China or from some country in Asia, superheroes that exist in the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Like when a cosmic threat threatens planet Earth, are there dudes with superpowers in China who stop fighting crime in China to go fight the cosmic threat?
I don't know enough about Marvel. I mean, not in the cinematic universe, but
Right.
I haven't read comics enough to know that.
I mean, I feel like the implications of that are really interesting. Like, there's no one with superpowers in Russia or China that have more people than America.
No, there's Russian superheroes.
yeah, like Omega
they
Red.
Do. They have.
Yeah,
Right.
Omega Red with Guardians. The Black Widow movie that will never come out now is all about those people.
Right.
There's a
Like last-
Canadian group, right? And then
Alpha Flight.
Alpha
Yeah,
Flight's
and then-
Canadian, yeah.
Okay, I'm thinking about the cinematic universe because I feel like that's the big export.
Yeah.
And sets the kind of paradigm now.
there's
It's
Russian
Canadian.
dudes in the Captain America movies.
Are they
There's
bad
some
guys?
Huh?
Are they
They're
villains?
bad guys, but that implies that they're part of that. They have that
They're part of that
they're, like,
cultural
that level
structure.
of person. They have they're not necessarily heroes, no, but they're still only by choice. They could be if they wanted to, I guess.
I don't know. I guess I haven't seen the Avengers stuff, so it just in my head I imagine that
And the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver are like from Russia, right? Or are they from like
An Eastern European.
yeah? They're
But
from
they come
somewhere,
here, and then
Latveria.
their story is about once they're here.
right?
Yeah.
Like,
And what's really interesting is the Black Panther character who comes from this like imaginary Africa world. Like I forget what it's called, but
Wakanda.
Wakanda. Yeah. So it's like Africa, but it's like magical Africa. Like he couldn't actually have come from Africa. That wouldn't fly in the Marvel universe. So he has to come from.
No, he's not from Africa. Like an African country that
Does
nobody
he?
knows. Secret African country, right?
He marries Aurora Monroe, who is actually from real Africa.
Okay.
But I think there's something really important about the fact that like when a cosmic threat threatens the whole planet, the people that like rise to the call to go up against that cosmic threat are either Americans by birth or Americans by immigration.
Like
Yeah.
the Autark.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. It's because the United Nations is here.
How's that taste?
It's great.
Looks grape.
Is that
I love it.
is that a push pop?
Huh?
What are you?
You guys
It's a
actually,
light.
I think that we maybe should end the stream.
Yeah, we made it up to chapter 23,
It's a good number.
Yeah.
and I think
Yeah,
that's
it
cool, yeah, because he's leaving now, right? He's leaving, getting back on the ship at this point.
Yeah, there's part of me that wants to argue that this should be a different book. This book is 2 books.
Yeah, totally.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. At least.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
we just finished discussing the first one.
Yeah.
Um, next,
Um,
next Sunday, same time.
How's everyone feel about that?
Yeah. Should we
Well,
be
how's
doing
that-
it every week? Should we give ourselves 2 weeks? How do we feel?
I could probably
wanna
use a
break
little
for
bit
a
of
week?
catch up time. Though I like meeting every weekend. I feel like like this week I've kind of fell behind a little bit.
Well, let's just do 2 weeks then.
2 weeks.
We've been jamming pretty hard. I think it's
We have.
fine to not do it.
Yeah, let's
This
so
one time.
so let's do it on
yeah, and
the
then we'll go back.
the
Yeah.
10th, Mother's Day.
Oh,
Thank you for the reminder.
Yeah, that'll be good. In case anyone forgets, you can do it right after book club.
Yeah, there we
The
go.
only kind of parent I have left.
where should we read to? Just like
12:30.
30?
Let's do the next 8. 30,
Yes,
31.
30, 31.
31 sounds good.
We're meeting on the 10th.
Hi, Melvin.
Oh, doo.
Here, I'll do mine.
No.
All right, I'm gonna stop the stream. Goodbye. Thanks for watching,
Bye.
listening, doing the thing. We'll see you in 2 weeks. May 10th, Mother's Day.
Bye, everyone.